Elias was a genius. Everyone in the city agreed. His mind was a marvel, a library of brilliant ideas. He sketched designs for impossible bridges, wrote the opening chapters of epic poems, and outlined philosophies that could change the world. He spoke with passion, and all who listened were mesmerized. But his studio told a different story. It was a graveyard of potential. Canvases sat empty, save for a single perfect brush. Blocks of the finest marble gathered dust, untouched by a chisel. Stacks of journals were filled with grand beginnings, but not a single end. Elias was a man tormented by the vast, paralyzing gap between his beautiful ideas and his empty hands. He wasn't lazy, ... He was terrified. His greatest strength, his visionary mind, was his curse. He saw the finished masterpiece so clearly that the first clumsy step of beginning felt like an insult to the idea itself. He would rather protect the dream of perfection in his mind than risk creating a flawed reality. He was the architect of 1,000 castles in the sky, living in a cold, empty room. One day, filled with a familiar self-loathing, he heard of a woman known simply as the Weaver. She lived in a small hut by the coast, and it was said she wove the most beautiful tapestries in the world. They were not grand or epic, but they were real. He found her, an old woman named Clara, working at a simple wooden loom. The hut was small, but it was filled wall to wall with finished work, warm blankets, colorful scarves, and small, intricate tapestries depicting the sea. Elias, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of finished work, immediately began to describe his own grand visions, the statues, the poems, the philosophies. Clara listened patiently, her hands and feet moving in a steady, rhythmic dance at the loom. When he finally finished, breathless, he asked her the question that haunted him. How do you create so much? How do you not fear that your work will be imperfect? What is your secret? Clara stopped her work and looked not at him, but at her hands. She did not give him a direct answer. Instead, she reached into a large basket beside her. It was filled with thousands of simple, dyed threads, tangled and chaotic. You, she said, her voice calm as the tide, are a man who is in love with the idea of a tapestry. You stand in the market and describe the magnificent picture you will one day weave. You dream of the final golden thread. She then pulled a single, plain, blue thread from the basket. I, she said, am just a weaver. I am not in love with the grand idea. I am in love with this. She held up the single thread. I am in love with the next thread. She turned back to the loom, took the blue thread, and with a thump of the machine, she wove it into the pattern. Your mind is in the clouds, son, she continued, her work never stopping. You want to build a castle in a single day, but there is no such thing as a castle. There is only the next stone. There is no such thing as a masterpiece. There is only the next brush stroke. There is no such thing as a tapestry. Thump. There is only thump, the next thumb thread. Elias stood in silence for a long time. He watched her work. He watched the simple, repetitive, boring motion. He watched the plain blue thread join a plain red thread, which joined a plain white thread. He watched as slowly, agonizingly slowly, a pattern of a small boat on the water began to emerge. It wasn't magic. It was work. It wasn't genius. It was process. He finally understood. His grand ideas weren't a gift. They were a burden he was using as an excuse. He wasn't protecting perfection. He was hiding from the work. When Elias returned to his city, his studio changed. He took his grandest sketch, a magnificent statue of a fallen hero, and he locked it in a drawer. In its place, he put up a single sheet of paper with 3 words written on it. The next thread, he picked up his chisel. He did not try to sculpt a hero. He did not try to sculpt a masterpiece. He only tried to do one thing: make the first chip. The story of Elias and Clara is the story of us. We are all filled with brilliant ideas. We all have grand ambitions, dreaming of the book we will write, the life we will build, the person we will become. But we become paralyzed. We are ambitious in our minds, but lazy with our hands. We wait for the perfect moment, the perfect motivation, the perfect plan. And while we wait, the studio of our life remains empty. There is no secret. The universe does not reward ideas. It rewards action. Stop falling in love with the finished tapestry. Fall in love with the simple, humble, everyday process. Fall in love with the next thread. Because the journey of 1,000 miles does not begin with a grand vision. It begins with one simple, unglamorous step. Go, pick up your thread. The loom is waiting.